When everyone started telling me that this episode of Disventure Camp All-Stars, episode 14, was horrible, Patreons were even quitting the show because of it, pretty much every character got derailed, I was shocked, but part of me wondered if this episode wasn't as bad as everyone is saying it was, and it isn't. It's worse. Hey there, welcome to the channel. My name is Alexa, and today this will be an entire video essay analyzing everything from this episode to prove how this is easily the worst episode in the entire series. Dare I say one of the worst episodes of show I've seen in recent years. Anyways, none of this video is meant to be hate towards animation cartoons. It is meant to share my personal analysis and opinion on the episode. Speaking of which, if you have different, that is completely fine. This is meant to be constructive criticism and again, analysis and opinion. Thank you. Here is how this is going to go. As much as I dislike this episode, there are a few good things about it. So I'll begin with the positives. Afterwards, I'll be going into each overall negative of the episode itself. I'll be going character by character, starting with the contestants, and then going to the production, and then we will land on some other plot points, and then we're going to head down to the conclusion. As well, the background footage for this video is not owned by me, it is owned by Animation Cartoons. Without further delay, on to the positives of this episode.
Ellie is lucky to have you. You're the coolest person I've ever met.
The few positives I do want to get out of the way, starting off with the animation and voice acting. It is always out of the park and it is genuinely impressive, especially now with the weekly release. It is just amazing as it has been this entire season, and it's overall stunning. And all the voice actors and actresses knocked it out of the park as usual, just great voice acting as well. Alrighty, now the characters. Rhea, Grett, and Gabby, only partially. These three carried this episode and saved it for me, though all three have their own negatives that I'll get into later. Again, we're saving that for the negative section. But the positives: appreciated some of Rhea's remorse, and finally someone with a strategic focus. Why is no one focusing on the game right now? And she was legit like me during the challenge, reaction-wise. Didn't think we'd get to the point where I think Rhea is carrying episodes, but here we are. Grett and Gabby are the only reason I was able to keep my screen on half the time. Both were just so sweet and wholesome to one another. I really appreciate the dual interaction. Shows why Grett thought some of it was real. The apology she also gave. Gabby's debate with herself. Again, I don't know how accurate that was handled. I'm no medical professional, but I enjoyed watching it, so yeah. Also, Aiden failing his plan so badly made me laugh for a solid 10 minutes. And the fact like he thought it was a game-defining move. I laughed harder after that, honestly. Anyways, that's pretty much all the positives of the episode. Let's move on to the negatives.
Ellie is lucky to have you. You're the coolest person I've ever met.
Getting this section off with the challenge because I don't think I can really start this off with anything else. I think anyone who's seen the trailer, episode, etc. knows how bad this challenge is. In summary, in duos, they have to do dances from TikTok in order to save themselves from the purge. Again, purge isn't the bad thing, it's the TikTok challenge itself. What was the reason for doing this? Because even the characters think this is cringe. Stupid, and if there wasn't a 3 million prize on the line, scratch that. They say they need more for this, and honestly, I fully agree. To me personally, I get humor is different from different people, but I personally did not find it funny at all. What was the point of this challenge? To just make some jokes? Because for me personally, basically none of them were anyway. Some of it was especially too far. It's not something I enjoyed, and anytime I saw the dance, I wanted to cover my screen, except when Grett and Gabby were just hit the gritty. The fact they finish each other's, and they high five. Look, if it's wholesome, it's wholesome. You know what I mean? Anyways, how to ruin past episodes is the next section. This episode sort of ruins past episodes, past scenes into certain jokes. Namely, the heroes come together scene. It's revealed in this episode Connor lied, and the entire speech he made in terms of his backstory was fully fake. Meaning the heroes all came together based on mainly a lie. I get some of the advice he said in terms of I don't know what the angle, I get you wanted to make Connor, but I think that was the angle now that I'm really thinking about it. But for me personally, it ruins what episode 11 and 12 had sort of set up. And to me, it makes makes Connor more unlikable than beforehand. I'll go more into Connor's backstory later when we get to him, though. As well, Alec's overall derailment this episode. I'll be going more to depth with this in literally just a second, but from how he acted here, it makes no sense with past episodes and some past scenes, and it somehow ruins those scenes a bit for me, too. For example, he says he isn't a bad person this episode, yet known so nonchalantly earlier this season says he left his kid crying with broken glass in the sand in that one story. I believe this was episode 8. I'll leave that up to your interpretation. With these overall main negatives out of the way, it's now onto the character negatives. I'll go from worst to best, so there's at least something to look forward to, you know? Alec. Alec wasn't the one I would have expected to gain such a bad derailment in such a short time frame, but let's go over how and why this was a derailment. Derailment is classified of a character's traits being extremely different compared to what is previously shown in the media of that character. Alec is known as someone introverted, keeping to himself a lot of the time. He's not really direct about his feelings and always keeps it to himself if he does have something most of the time. This is shown throughout season 1 and especially throughout season 3 as well. There are many instances this episode where Alec is discussing his feelings very direct, almost as if this is what he would usually do in this situation. Main examples from this episode that come to mind are, I wish I was half the man as you at the fishing scene, which Alec has never thought of Connor in this manner. Yeah, he does think of him as someone cooler and a friend, but nowhere near the amount of praise he gave him within this episode. From what I saw anyway. His constant apologies. Yes, I do think it's in character for him to want to apologize for this, but not to the extent he does here. He spends like every scene he's in trying so hard to apologize every second, and he would never be this dedicated, usually unless it was for some strategy reasoning, which it is never stated that was the case. I think what makes me more upset about this is they perfectly showcase how to handle Alec's introverted nature and usual character and hidden type feeling personality within the literal same episode. While going up to Gabby to Grett to say that we need to stick together, and how Rhea says just allies, he looks around, unsure and just clearly nervous with it. That is how Alec usually reacts, usually just actions, not what is shown otherwise. And before you say, but Alexa, last episode he directly said his feelings. He was drunk. And when you are drunk, you are more likely to reveal what you truly do feel on the inside. So that makes 10 more times sense than whatever this is. Switching from this, some other statements he made this episode that make no sense from what we know about Alec. The I'm not a bad person line on the boat with Connor when they were trying to paddle back to shore. Alec has proven he can take accountability for his actions, and he knows what he's done is partially messed up. He wishes he could be a better father. And let's not forget again that story I mentioned earlier, he is not the best person. And he knows it. I mean, there's a reason he said he wished his son was more like Fiore, and he fell for Rhea, of all people. Look, deep down, she might be a better person, but she's attempted to, murder it twice at this point, so I don't want to hear it right now. And even if he does believe this, he would never admit it right there and then. Though this is less of a statement, and more of it's just a scene. The persistence of his apology / the annoyance, along with the silence after Connor asked, did you like her before or episode 6? Or something similar to that. And he was dead silent. What the heck? He's been so persistent, but when he hears this, he shuts up. That makes it seem, or rather implies to me personally, that he liked her before episode 6. But that makes no sense in the context of those episodes. In episodes 4 and 5, he showed pure annoyance with her in certain interactions. It wasn't until episode 6 specifically till the two had any form of speaking decent interaction, and that was legit because they were kind of forced to do so. I love Alaria and the ship and all, but the fact of the matter is, it makes no sense for him to have feelings beforehand, which again, is what seems implied. And if that's not true, which I just proved, why didn't he say something since he's been so persistent this entire episode, right? At least be consistent somewhat with this. Then again, this entire season's had an inconsistency issue sometimes, so whatever. Alec, as stated before, keeps to himself at most times. If his friendship was this strong with Connor, they should have shown it, since he previously was mad at him for exposing the Villains Alliance with the letter thing. Alec also usually does take the hint to be quiet when need be, and he knows what to do. But with Connor, guess that's out the window or something. Oh, except when it's not relevant. Alec's interactions could have been interesting with Connor, but they switch it into something, to me, that just really isn't. Sometimes Alec is himself this episode, but it's so rare and far between, it's just, very rarely. All in all, Alec, this episode is not Alec, that is Alex. Moving on to Aiden. As much as I laughed at him for failing the Alaria plan, I should have betted money. That would have been so smart of me. And how sweet his confessional to James was. FYI, if James and Yule were here, they could have carried this episode. They could have done it. Aiden is not in this episode. Allow me to break this down. Firstly, at the end of the episode, Aiden is someone that has been shown to be willing to help and make others feel better, or at least attempt. Here, he doesn't, and he waits for Jake. Despite the two beginning to get along, ain't no way Aiden trusts Jake this much to fix this. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me personally. You could argue this was because he was the original one who revealed Alaria, and therefore didn't want to talk to them because of it. But it wasn't stated nor implied. I'm referring to Connor's scene here, by the way. Secondly, why is Aiden spying on Connor and Alec in that one scene? Like, what benefit does that bring him? What does he think's gonna happen? Jake and Aiden could have talked. What they did somewhere else, I just don't understand. Like, what was Alec gonna do? And why was Jake even there? And they can't even hear them! So it's not like it matters much, they can only tell on expressions. Oh my gosh. To me, there is no indication after the Alaria situation that he would spy on people so much. Thirdly, the fact he said that Alaria kissing means they're officially an item now. Oh my... That made me so mad. It's unreal. By that logic, everyone who kissed one another are now an item. Probably in episode 3 too. By this logic, oh, what do you mean Tess and Hunter aren't an item? Well, they kissed, so you're wrong. I get it's a bit different, but I think my point is clear. As well, he partially pushed for Connor's reaction in the confessional, as well as in the scene itself, to have a reaction even for... It's just... Oh, and I'm not done yet. Fourthly, the dances he did made me want to throw my computer screen to the other side of the room, just so I could get it away at times. It makes sense what he knew it. What is James teaching? Oh my gosh. Part of me wonders what it could have been like to see Aiden give dance classes, but knowing how it could have been regarding this entire episode, I'd rather stay in the dark, so. Fifthly, him saying he'd miss Gabby. Excuse me? Yep. He'll totally miss the person he almost voted out a few episodes before, the person he voted out their girlfriend from, the person who threatened him, the person he wanted out for episodes upon episodes. Yep, he will totally, fully, 1000% miss her. What? Oh my gosh. Sixthly, I guess his fear of heights is completely over, even though he himself was more unsure multiple episodes before, because he had no issue at all with this. Maybe this is a bit nitpicky in terms, but I just... maybe it's just fully over it, and it's subtle development that I should have noticed. Also, he didn't even try to stop Rhea from sabotaging, despite him clearly being like, how dare you? Also, Season 2, Episode 9, need I remind you, Aiden? Teehee. Anyways, seventhly, why is he still here over Gabby? Yule, Ellie, James, Muriel, I could go on and on, honestly. I need the answer, but we'll go into that more later. There's an entire section dedicated to that. Don't worry. Eighthly, he was just annoying this episode to me, due to all the reasons listed above. I feel like what's not really helping with this is they keep trying. It feels like they're forcing him to be relevant in some way, so it's justified. Oh, he's staying because he spied on Ellery. Oh, he's staying because he's in the love mess with Jake and Tom. Oh, he's staying. You see my point? If he went like 5 episodes before, I don't know, I wouldn't have be saying all this. If he makes finale again, oh my gosh. Anyway, in summary, Eden is better, yes. Allie. Watching Allie this episode made me go so excited to see what they were going to do with her character, to just sad because of how bad she was handled this episode. Girl, she could have been so much more. From the start, they brought back her hater arc, and I was excited to see what they do with it now, especially with the insecurities shining through, because it had been a while, or a little bit. Maybe, just maybe, Jake could help her through it? That makes sense in Ellie's character, and seeing her get uplifted by Rhea was nice to see, or rather, it made sense, and her recalling the past season shows she's watched it, and she should know how to improve her gameplay. However, this all crumbled down when she wanted to get back at Jake by leaving him to die. Is what Jake said not the nicest, and should he have said some of the things he said? No. But does that give her the right to leave him to perish? This was a life or death situation. So, no, it doesn't. She also never went to check on him to make sure he would be okay in any aspect. And she just thought she'd win without him? No offense, Allie, but if the challenge is in duos, wouldn't you think that you would have to have both of you there in order for it to count? Just an idea. As well, I think what makes me madder at this is they decided to end her haters arc with this. What? After 14 episodes, one of the longest side arcs in this entire season, they ended with her saying, which again, this wouldn't be an issue. It wouldn't be an issue saying, I don't care, that would be a nice ending if it was literally anything, but leaving Jake to go die. As well, it would have worked better if, I don't know, they didn't stop the arc halfway through the season to make her Jake's new rival that came right out of left field. And now she'll just save the villains, which will be fun, but how much will that really add to her character? For someone who was so bland, and even earlier in the episode said she has to worry about what others think of her, the fact they ended here is something. What makes it even worse is she didn't even get that much focus while ending her arc. If we're gonna end Allie's thing she's done most of the season, just maybe give her more than what she got, more than a confessional or so to end this. And though I wonder why she didn't at least try to talk to Connor, maybe attempt to become close to the heroes, she instead decided to spy along with Aiden. I would have much rather her talk to Connor if she is switching to the villains. It would add a further conflict and make it more interesting. It could also help overall with her this episode specifically. As well, the Golden Watch was plot armor for her and Jake's too. Of course, Jake has unlimited plot armor, but that's past the point, which is just annoying to me. The fact you had to give plot armor so much just to make Gabby go out should have proved she shouldn't have gone. Or rather, it also brings the episode down itself due to it. Allie seems to also partially be becoming the next Rhea, and I'm worried. Look, I love a villain. I love a villain arc, too. Like, that is my tea. But if the first thing she does when becoming a villain is leaving people to perish, then I'm fearing it. There's only 7 episodes left, and it's also going to be another Rhea issue where she became the villain too late, too little. Speaking of Rhea, note her arc didn't end when she didn't listen to Hunter's advice to ignore the haters. Not when Tess gave her some advice, which by the way, she went fully against this episode. Oh, but when Rhea gave her the advice, she's like, yep, that is what I need to believe. By this, she's more willing to listen to anything, at most a friend, unquotes even then, rather than her bestie and her boyfriend. Like, what? As well, an overall issue with this episode is shown the inconsistency of the characters, but I'd like to more focus with Allie. It's like a rolling your dice to choose your Allie for the episode. Will you get insecure Allie? Will you get annoying Allie, the Jake rivalry? Will you get NPC Allie, or will you get multiple of them? I'm pointing this out here because it's an important issue again to the episode itself. Let me just go over how she was. From what my memory, again, it's been a second since I've rewatched All Stars. Episode 1 to 2, NPC Alley is back. Episodes 3 to 6, Haters Arc. Episode 7 to 8, Jake's New Rival. Episode 9, Haters Arc. Episode 10, Jake's New Rival. Episode 11, 12, and kinda 13, NPC. Episode 14, Haters Arc. It's a mix and match situation. Some get continued sometimes and some don't. And it's an issue because the idea of her having haters and just not being okay with it, it's a great one, but the execution is just, no. At least in season 2, she was somewhat consistent with herself. Anyways, in summary, Ellie is 10 times better than Allie. Moving on to Jake. You know, usually with Jake, you could rant like for an hour and you'd still not be done with his character. For some reason, though, this episode specifically, there is not much to really mention, but let's go through it. I appreciate the fact he thought about the game even for a second. Thank you! And some of his remarks through the episode made me laugh a little. Back to the negatives, though. First off, why did he think the villains alliance would get messed up just from a kiss reveal? Like, y'all, please. I get it's Jake, and he thought the point of it was to get that done, but why did he also think that could happen from this? Like, who's gonna care? His dynamic with Allie is extremely annoying. So, what a surprise when the main focus for him this episode is literally that dynamic. It's, shocker, annoying! Wow. Firstly, the fact he slowly got annoyed with Allie, kept going back, somewhat makes sense, especially when there's $3 million on the line. I understand that. My issue is where he decided that bringing Hunter into the conversation was a good idea. Like, I can argue that the rest was mostly in the moment, even still probably shouldn't have said that, but that's not the point right now. But then he pulls out the Hunter card for the second time. Why? Also, I just have to mention the fact he's like, I need to trust people, and Allie still pulled that. If Jake backtracks on development, I know who I'm blaming next. Jake's relevancy clearly needed to stay because he didn't get that much focus this episode, so he was the one chosen to talk to Connor. I like the parallel, but I think Allie would have been a much better choice to use here for the talk. I think it could have helped her, especially this episode where she got so derailed, and maybe it even adds to her conflict with the heroes and the villains. Like, wow, maybe I do connect with the heroes, maybe I shouldn't side with the villains, or something like that. It could be a lot more interesting. Still, he did fine in the scene, and I can't really fault Jake much, and the hug was sweet somewhat. Jake's other dynamic with Aiden is not my personal cup of tea, mainly because I'm convinced once it's revealed Jake eliminated James. Aiden, how long is it gonna take you to figure this out? It's gonna end bad. Plus, anything revolving the love mess as well, it's just somewhat a mess usually. All in all, he was cool this episode. Not that bad, but still. He's probably going next episode thanks to Allie, but Connor, he was definitely the focus this episode, having the most scenes in the episode revolve around himself. So let's dive into this. He didn't seem out of character mostly this episode. Every interaction with Alec he reacted as expected. Speaking of which, I did like how he didn't have much reaction. Felt interesting and made the last scene of the episode a lot more impactful. Him doing that dance, though, on the boat, it's gonna be in my nightmares, I think, forever. Anyways, I do think the give me my face back joke was one of the only times I laughed this, so yeah. I think my issue with Connor this episode was in the last scene, as it feels like a backtrack somewhat more than a development. Let me make this clear. The idea of Connor never achieving the business, in fact, he was just given it, I do think it could be interesting. I think it takes away Connor from first, though. Let's talk about first things first. I don't think this was written out enough. For such a big moment for Connor's character, probably one of the most important he's ever gonna get. There was like one scene last episode to showcase this. That's all there was again from my memory, and I would have rather to see more clues. Secondly, I feel like him still being so attached to Rhea weakens not only some earlier episode scenes where he confronted her, episode 11 a bit. To become his own character, he's still so attached to Rhea. It just doesn't make sense from what we've seen beforehand a bit with him. With such dedication, it's just, Thirdly, again, it ruins its scenes itself in earlier episodes. Like the Rhea scene I just mentioned, or the standing up scene, or him being so dedicated. It feels like it sort of ruins that, because in the end, he still does really care for her. It doesn't matter in the end. Those scenes didn't matter in the end because he's still, in the end, caring so much about Rhea. Again, I think it just isn't on par and weakens the overall scene and the story they were trying to tell here, especially with some of the execution. Fourthly, this is just my own personal opinion, but this made me lose a lot of respect for his character. I feel like his older backstory, where he really worked to get to where he was, made him feel more well-rounded. Again, this is just my personal opinion, and I felt like it just really built upon the heroes. He can still have that scene sort of just a bit chinked, I feel like. I don't know. Again, my personal take. With Rhea, despite having a pretty huge amount of scenes this episode, there's just not much to really say about her. This is due because she carried! Shockingly, Rhea, of all characters, managed to avoid the derailment strike of this episode? What? And to think I hated her guts a few episodes ago. Nothing more to say, except she was just awesome, complexity was great, and please, give her some more focus, because she's actually focusing on the game. Grett. As wholesome as her and Gabby were, and seeing her apologize was sweet, and made this episode bearable, of course there's some negatives with her too. Hooray! We needed at least another episode where her and Gabby are becoming friends. There is no way in an instant Grett is A, so direct, B, so wholesome with her, C, thinking she's the coolest person, etc., with Gabby. What I'm saying is this feels extremely rushed, even if this is Grett's first real friend in a while. And they had the time. They've had like 14 episodes. Even if you are still going to eliminate Gabby this episode, there is no excuse to rush this. Otherwise, it's still fun to see, but I think it's out of character for Grett to be attached so fast when originally, even last episode, she was trying to just play it off with it, go slow a bit with it. As good as this plotline, I would say, is. Grett also losing both her ex-boyfriend and best friend back-to-back makes her an easy, predictable finalist, which scares me into the fact she might not make it and they'll eliminate her like fourth for some extra shocking. Please don't! Please! They don't want predictable winners this season, like Miriam and James are not predictable winners. This season will be, I don't think, any different. And I feel like Grett on her own after rejecting you will make her one of the strongest characters in the season, if not already. I'm just mainly worried for a future replacement. I'm putting this here as she also might become too predictable, in quotes. Also, I did not regret watching her this episode, like I did a lot of other characters. Okay, that's a really bad pun, but moving on to Gabby! I got spoiled for her leaving, but a little part of me had hope that maybe she was safe. Darn that second, though, when her and Grett were on the bottom two, I already knew that her fate was sealed. She was just amazing this episode, though. Her interactions with Grett were so fun, and she was one of the only to not be out of character. And a true achievement from Gabby. Though, of course, there's negatives. Firstly, I'd like to mention I am in no way a medical professional or have researched to figure out what Gabby's condition is, so I don't know how accurate it was portrayed. For the purposes of this discussion, I'll be calling the other person she sees her other side. Her other side was so underutilized. We obviously saw it a lot this episode, but that was kind of basically it. And again, there's like 14 episodes, 5 without Ellie, and I feel like there was time to bring it back sometime else. Or better yet, don't eliminate her yet and let it grow. Let that thing side grow and just, it'll be even more impactful. As stated originally, the Grett and Gabby plot was extremely rushed. I do think it's in character for Gabby to view Grett being so close to her. She thought of Ellie as her bestie by like episode 3 in Disventure Camp season 1. So it doesn't strike me as much with her. Her goodbye was sweet, but this is one of the most rigged and unfair eliminations I've ever seen. Like, the phones were swished or something? I'm trying to rewatch the episode to see if I can keep up with it, but, like, I couldn't. They had to pull an advantage, a screwed over phone situation, and a purge. All of that just to get Gabby eliminated. You know, don't you think if you have to put in all this effort just to send her off, don't you have a little slight thinking that she should have, I don't know, stayed in the competition? Moving on from the contestants, I'll be discussing the production. This will be a lot shorter than what we just did because they, quite frankly, didn't have much to do, so there's not really much to note here. I'll get into this regardless. Oliver, it turns out he is still there, he is still doing things. I will admit I am still pretty salty about him snitching on Emily because she was carrying production, in my opinion. I mean, I think these past few production episodes have proven that. Another topic for another time, though. The fact he's taking over for Trevor is pretty sweet, because he's just not ready to do so. and his interaction with Crystal was kind of sweet. However, isn't Oliver the one who makes the challenges in universe now? Therefore, he is the one responsible for the creation of this challenge in universe. And for that, he is dropping another tier down the list. How dare he cause this challenge to exist? Crystal, if this becomes a love square, then I'll probably have to go bash my head into a roof. Jokes aside, she was her usual self this episode, though I do think Oliver and Crystal felt a little bit closer than friends in that specific scene for some reason. I don't know, okay? She was decent the rest of the episode, and how she usually does the episodes. Derek. Wonder if he'll just kind of finally realize what happened with Trevor, because even if he doesn't see him in that way, he still somewhat cares. He was as usual, not much more to know. Trevor, my main question is, when did he get so mad at Derek? The previous episode just had him a bit sad from all this. It didn't develop his anger throughout. This could have been a bit more nitpicky, since I do think it's very in character for Trevor to think something like this. I just kind of wish they spent an episode or two developing this anger, and I think it could have been pretty interesting if they wished. And they had 14 episodes. I don't want to hear it. They had the time to develop this. Now we move on to my favorite section of the video, called Why the Heck Did They Eliminate Gabby? Welcome to the question section, where I ask the most important question of the video. Why eliminate Gabby over Aiden, Allie, Jake? I'd love explanations, because as stated earlier, the other side of her was underutilized. This also had a lot of potential, whether it leads to her being more evil, not being able to handle it, and maybe even she gets Grett in on this to try and help her. Speaking of Grett, we didn't really get much more development of their friendship because it was so darn rushed. What if instead we saw Grett trying to figure out and trying to help Gabby for whatever she's going through, and this is what causes the two to start becoming besties. They grow this friendship because of her trying to help, and in the end, thanks to Grett's help, but also because thanks to her own self, this leads to Gabby standing up to her other side. This would allow Grett to quote-unquote pay back for Gabby helping her get out of that toxic relationship with Yule and allowing her to grow as a person. Then you can eliminate Gabby episode 16, episode 15, I don't care. You get more time with Grett and Gabby, it grows as a nice plot line, etc, etc. Gabby also has more potential with the Villain Alliance member interactions. We didn't get to see much of her in Rhea, but with the fan/fangirl type dynamic, I think it could have been pretty fun to see. Additionally, I kind of wanted to see her interact with more with Alec. This might be personal bias, but I think that would have been so fun to see. And maybe she even interacted with the heroes to give Aiden and Jake a justified reason to go say, "Oh, I miss her," yada yada yada. Why is Aiden still here? I'm gonna ask this one more time. You have all of this potential sitting right here with Gabby, and you kick her out to keep Aiden, someone who is basically doing nothing right now, someone who is not focused on the game at all or doing interesting plot lines to have an excuse to not do the game at all. I just cannot. And the thing is, they have potential to use Aiden in other ways. Remember his actor backstory? They could have used that! There is no excuse, and I don't see why Aiden's still here. Jake I also partially don't get, but also partially do, because he's trying to self-improve, so I guess that's more justified. Otherwise, I feel like Gabby had so much to offer, and they just threw it away because let's keep in Twink Part 1 in this, why don't we? Moving on, we have to go to the final section of this video, the conclusion.
Ellie is lucky to have you. You're the coolest person I've ever met.
In conclusion, if this is the future of what Disventure Camp All-Stars is gonna be, I am genuinely scared because there is so much potential. There has been so many good episodes within this season. And if this is what we're gonna be getting, mischaracterization, bad /crunch challenges, bad writing, derailment, I don't know. But what are your thoughts this episode? I would love to read in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching this video, and have an awesome day/night. Until next time.